Welcome. I'm Jenny Hadfield, also known as Coach Jenny, and welcome to the first training class for the Cleveland Marathon, Half Marathon, 10K, and 5K. I'm so excited because this is the very first running class I'll be teaching this training season. There'll be two more after this one mid-season and one later as we get closer to the race to talk about race strategies. And I'll also be answering your training questions all season long on the Cleveland Marathon Facebook page. And it's really important. Everybody has their own training recipe, and my mission in life is to teach you how to run at your best. So with that, here's the lineup for this running class. Kicking off the training season and sharing the 7 secrets of a highly successful training season. Everything a runner should know before they get started. These are habits and traits and characteristics that I've recognized in the almost 20 years that I've been coaching people one-on-one, in groups, and online. 7 elements that are going to help optimize your time, your effort, and really bring out the best runner in you. So we're going to start with running from where you are, talking about letting your body be your guide, evolution, not revolution, creating your own recipe, consistency is key, thinking outside the mileage, and training mindfully. 7 elements. Here we go. So secret number 1 is starting from where you are rather than where you want to be. Oftentimes we get caught up in the excitement of setting that goal. So I'm going to run a half marathon, and then we project ourselves into that goal and we start training hard. What happens if you don't have the base of miles under you and you start training, it's only a matter of weeks before either aches and pains, burnout, or something kicks in as an obstacle for you. It's going to happen primarily because running is a very high impact activity and your body needs time to adapt to those stresses. Everybody adapts differently at different rates. Everybody's got a different running efficiency form. So there's a lot of variables in all of this, but it's vitally important if you want to do this successful, if you want to toe the line in May at the race successfully and continue on, you need to start from a very real point. And that is really easy to do. All you have to do is take a personal inventory, just like you do at the doctor's office when you fill out those aggravating forms. Those are for a reason. They're asking you what your health history is. And you can do the same thing with your running fitness. What am I doing? Do I have any injuries? Is my knee bugging me now? Is my hip bugging me? If you have any aches and pains, that needs to go down on your personal inventory because that's a red flag. Are you running right now? Are you running 3 times a week? Are you running 5 times a week? What kind of mileage base do you have coming into this? All those things are really important. Do you have time to train? All these variables that go into creating your personal running recipe. But starting with taking a personal inventory and kind of noting what you're doing right now is key. Then setting a realistic goal based on the race distance, your training, and your finish. And what I mean by that is if you're not doing anything right now, it's not that you couldn't do a half marathon or a marathon. You can. But if you're not doing anything right now and you're coming off the couch, this is the perfect season to use a 5K or a 10K to get yourself back into shape, to start your running season, to start your training plan for an eventual half or full marathon. Again, you can get off the couch and certainly train in 12, 14 weeks towards a longer distance race. That can absolutely happen. But just when you do that, you're setting yourself up for very high risk of injuries, which is going to put a kibosh on your ultimate goal. So setting a realistic goal, getting real with the distance based on where you're at right now, and then just setting the right runway distance so you achieve that goal with success and happiness rather than burnout and fatigue and possible injury. Same thing with your training. You want to set a realistic goal. If you are running 3 times a week for 3 to 4 miles, that's perfect. You want to find a training program that matches that. And then ultimately, again, the setting of the realistic goal for your finish means if this is your first time doing any of those distances, the goal is to always finish upright and with a smile on your face, rather than setting yourself up for a goal, a time, a specific time where the only ones, elite runners don't do this, only mortals do this. You set yourself up, I'm going to do that half marathon in 2 hours. Well, guess what? If you don't do that half marathon in 2 hours, you're going to be upset. So go into it saying your primary goal should be, I'm going to cross that finish line upright with a smile on my face so you have a happy finish line photo. So setting realistic goals for your race distance, for your training and your finish are really important because you're going to set yourself up for success rather than failure. Now, matching your current running routine with a training plan goes into that realistic goal for where you're at. What I mean by this is sometimes you get so excited about that destination, that race, that carrot that's out in front of you, that it jumpstarts your training and you think, oh, I got to train hard for this. So I'm going to go from running 3 times a week to running 5 times a week, or I'm going to run, I've been doing 3 or 4 miles. I'm going to jump into doing 5 or 6 because that's going to help me prepare. Well, that's not how running works with our bodies. We can absolutely do that, but what tends to happen is that becomes an obstacle because it takes a longer time for you to adapt and recover when you make huge jumps in your training than it does if you make tiny little adjustments along the way. So one way around this, one way to optimize your time and your training effort is to match your current running routine with that of the first week of your training plan. In other words, let's say you're going to do your first half marathon. You've been running 3 times a week, sometimes 4, for 30 to 40 minutes. That is in perfect alignment with the half marathon, the beginner half marathon training program that I have up on the Cleveland Marathon website. If you go to clevelandmarathon.com and go to the training page, source for that, the training page for that, I have a series of 5 different levels of training programs for each distance, for 5K, for 10K, for half marathon, and for the marathon. And they're all based on, there's walk, there's run walk, there's beginning run, there's intermediate run, and there's advanced run. And each one of those has a description on it based on what you're currently doing now. So take a look at the first week of those training programs to see if that's a good fit for you. Because if it is, you'll see, oh, that kind of looks like what I'm doing. If you haven't been doing any running training, maybe you're in great shape, you're doing Zumba, you're doing yoga, you're doing other maybe spinning classes, it means that you have great cardiovascular fitness, but your body isn't yet in tune with the demands of the impact forces of running, and that's what makes running so unique and so special. So keep that in mind. A run-walk program might be good for you. Maybe limiting the number of training days, keeping it to 3 times a week and including your cross-training in there. There's a lot of things, and if you have specific questions about your training regimen and which program should be best for you, ask it on the Facebook page, on the Cleveland Marathon Facebook page, and I can help guide you best to what training plan will work for you. Because ultimately we're talking about reducing the risk of burnout, which happens when you do something doing too much too soon, risks for injuries, and ultimately fatigue. Again, you can do all of these things, you can jump ahead, you can certainly train hard, but ultimately it bites you in the butt because it catches up with you. The key to all of this is increasing your happiness meter, which leads to running farther, running faster, running more than you've ever believed, running better than you've ever believed, and tapping into your best runner. A training secret number 2 is letting your body be your guide as you train. This is really important because although there is a blueprint training program, it never happens perfectly. You have to think like you're a river. And what I mean by that is you have to go with the flow of your life, of your work, of your family, of your body, of how your body adapts to the training, of things that happen along the way. You may get sick. You may have a perfect training season where nothing happens, but yet on the professional side, you find that you're so busy you can't get in the optimal amount or the planned amount on paper. So that blueprint is your starting point. That blueprint training program that's on paper is an idea, a template from which You want to make sure that you adapt and modify and flow with the season. Last year, we had the snowiest winter, and it was just a brutal training season. And lots of folks did inside treadmill running, which is a fantastic way to train. Some folks trained outside through the snow. That affects the performance level. That affects the quality of every run. Even though you're out there doing it, little things like that can make a dramatic difference in how your training season goes. So it's not everything we can control. So think like a river. There's going to be calm, tranquil times, and there's also going to be times where you're going through the rapids and hanging on for dear life. But if you think flexibly and you plan flexibly and know that your training plan is merely a template, merely a guide from which you're going to be able to modify and have to modify along the way, it becomes a lot less stressful. And you end up training by how your body's adapting. And when you do that, you allow yourself to recover, which allows you to go into that next workout in optimal shape. If you're beating yourself down, let's say you get sick, you get a cold, and you end up following that training program to a T, not making any modification at all, pushing hard where it says to push hard, running long when you really don't feel very well, that has a dramatic effect on your recovery level. It extends it, it prolongs it. So that's going to affect the next 2 or 3 weeks down the road. Instead, if you're following the flow, if you're training like a river, you're modifying. You're saying, okay, I'm sick this week, so I'm going to do really easy, shorter runs to modify so that I can get through this week, recover, get stronger, and come back to next week's training cycle, training schedule, and modify from there and train from that point. So what I'm saying is that although you're starting from week 1 on your training plan, by week 6, you may have a completely different training plan in front of you because of the rapids that happen along the way. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. So the key is to be flexible. Your body is faster than Twitter at communication. It is. If you can go out for a run, and I'm a huge advocate of training by feel, by effort, heart rate's in there, but tuning into your body rather than focusing on just that watch. The pace is the outcome. If you're tuning in, let's say you're supposed to go run an easy run, a 4-mile easy run today, and last night you didn't sleep, the kids were up, one of them was sick, so you didn't sleep very well, you didn't eat very well yesterday, and you're not feeling very well. You go out for that easy run. If you follow your watch and you have a predetermined pace in your head, now all of a sudden you're following that pace, that watch, rather than listening to your body. And that's what I mean by that. So instead, if you were listening to your body and training by reality, by what's going on, which you're hitting a little, few rapids in that situation, when you train by your body, now all of a sudden you're going to be training a little bit slower on that day, perhaps. If you're not feeling very well, you're tuning into your breath, which is a fantastic way of going by effort and by feel. A happy zone, an easy zone, you should be able to talk. You shouldn't hear your breathing. If you're gasping for air at your normal pace, you're running too hard if you're supposed to be running easy. So by tuning into your body and letting your body be that guide, you're able to adapt on the day and run in the right zone on the day versus being trapped by a number on a watch. The watch is the outcome. The watch is something that you look at and say, oh, look, I was following my body today and I ran easy. And guess what? I didn't sleep very well last night. I'm not feeling very well. I didn't eat very well. And I ran a 10:30 instead of a 10-minute pace in my easy zone. Look at that. And then you move on. It doesn't mean that you go out and run at that 10-minute pace no matter what. There's a big difference between the two, and your body will tell you immediately if you tune in. Big difference. So again, your training plan is not a blueprint, or is a blueprint, excuse me. It's not set in stone. It's made to modify. When I coach athletes one-on-one, I modify and change and shift based on how their body is adapting. And every season is different. Every week is different. So you have the power and you're going to learn the knowledge and how to do that. And if you have questions along the way, again, shoot them out to me at Facebook, because you're creating your own training recipe, and everybody can do that. The real goal, folks, the real goal this season is to reach the start line healthy. Even if this means training fewer miles along the way. And this is tough, especially for the longer distance athletes that are looking at, I got to get in 10 or 11 or 12. I got to go the distance of the race. I got to do my 20 milers. That, if you push to catch up, if you get sick, if you push to get miles in, to make that plan blueprint, and your body isn't where it needs to be to do those miles, it's only going to hurt you. It's going to fatigue you. It's going to cause you longer recovery, and ultimately it's going to hurt your performance down the road. So again, the key is to focus on always training from where you are. If you focus on that one thing and let your body be your guide as you go, you're going to optimize your time, your training, and you're going to toe the line in a very healthy state, which is the key. If you toe the line fatigued because you caught up in training, your performance isn't going to be optimal. Okay, really important. It's hard to quiet the mind on that, because in our minds we think we need to get in a certain number of miles. But if you focus on just having the faith and knowing that having fewer miles under your belt on that start line is better, because you're going to be stronger, because you're not going to be wiped out when you're running that race. It works. It works. It works. It works. The training secret number 3 is really a state of mind. It's to think evolution, not revolution. And so much of our life comes to us so quickly. Twitter and Facebook and email and texting, everything happens so quickly. Running doesn't happen that way. One, because it's very demanding. It's the most primal thing we can do outside of walking physically, but it's so demanding on our bodies in terms of impact and energy consumption that it requires time to reach a significant goal. Let's say you're setting a goal to run your first marathon and you haven't run a race, or you haven't run a half marathon. It's a significant goal for you. It's a new goal, but it's a significant goal. You can absolutely do that, but that's going to require a significant runway of time to get you there. So that's what I mean about evolution, revolution. Running isn't revolutionary. It takes time for your body to adapt. It takes time for your body to grow and get stronger. This was really illustrated well. I was interviewing marathon runner and ultra marathon runner now, Josh Cox, who 2 years ago set the U.S. 50K U.S. record. He was just, I think, 7 seconds off setting the world record time at Arizona. And I had asked him, how did your training go this season? What did you do differently this season? At what points did you set out to train to break this world record for the 50K? And how did you do it? And his response was so informing. He said, I started to train for this 50K, the world record, when I started running in high school. In other words, he didn't start a training season thinking, I'm going to set a world record. Or he didn't start off in high school thinking, I'm going to set out this season for a 50K world record. In high school, he started out with his high school events, whether that was cross country or track, and evolved from there. Years and years later, here he is on the marathon scene and the 50K world record scene. And the volume of training followed him there and allowed him to progress gradually to reaching just a profoundly successful career in long distance running. And that's what I'm trying to tell you here, is that secret is setting a goal for yourself, but then allowing your body to gradually work up to meeting that goal. In other words, giving yourself a long enough runway to meet and exceed those goals. When you do that, when you have the patience to evolve, your best runner, your happiest runner is going to shine. The fourth training secret is really just keeping track, creating your own recipe. And you do that by tuning in, keeping track, and logging your miles, your time, the weather, your mood, your effort level when you were running, how did it feel, your energy level, your shoes, how many miles you have on them, how they're holding up, the food that you eat, how much you sleep, and your pre-long run rituals for those of you who are training for the half and full marathon in particular, what you're doing the night before your long runs, so that when you get up to the point where we're talking about race strategy, none of that is a secret. Every single week of your training season is a dress rehearsal for race weekend, no matter what distance you're doing. So the more that you keep track of all these things, the more you're writing your story. You're writing your personal running story, so that when you get to the end of that season, you can reflect on what went right, what went wrong, how your body responds to certain foods, how your energy level shifted throughout times of ebbing and flowing, peaks and valleys in your training. The more you know about how your body responds to training, the better you're going to be able to train in the higher levels of performance you're going to be able to reach. Again, going back to that first point of your training, on paper is a blueprint from which you're going to tailor and customize. This is what I do when I work with athletes one-on-one. Every single training program that I create is unique to their lifestyle, what's going on in their lives, their family, their health, their particular skills, their interests. All of those things go into it. You may be somebody that does karate on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that is your part of your personal recipe. Someone else might do Zumba. Somebody else might prefer to do, run 5 days a week. They're more of a traditional runner. Every single runner has their own optimal running recipe, and it all starts with keeping track of it. I'm an old school nut on this, although I do use fitday.com to keep track of my fuel. I just think it's the coolest. It's free, but it's the coolest tool. There's a lot of other calculators out there as well. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but it'll allow you to plug in the general information for your activity, so you get a sense of how much energy you are expending. That's an estimate, of course. So you can plug in your runs, you can plug in your cross-training workouts to get an estimate on what your expenditure is on that day, but also you can plug in the foods that you eat to see not only the nutrient breakdown, but the caloric consumption. So you can balance out, just like your car economy, your car fuel, what you're taking in and what you're expending. And this becomes vital for folks that are trying to lose weight, because if you're taking in a lot more calories than you're expending, you're going to gain weight or you're going to maintain weight. If you're taking in really low quality fuel, low quality foods, that's going to have an effect on how your metabolism functions, and also has an effect on the quality of your runs and the quality of how you feel, your energy levels and all of that. And one great way of really tuning into this is starting in the beginning of the season, and working through and making little tweaks along the way, both with your fuel and also your training, keeping track of that log. It's like a journal, your running journal. Whether that's on paper, whether that's on fitday.com, or whether it's on some other digital log that's out there. There's so many applications now and logs that you can use digitally. The key is to keep track and start to create your running recipe, because you're going to tune in and learn so much about yourself. Again, the goal is to not make huge changes along the way, to make little tweaks along the way, so that when you toe the line in May, you have a great idea of what you want to eat the night before the race, what sits well, what works well for breakfast before you set off to do a race, or before you set off to do a long run. Keep track, write that down, because you're going to be nervous. Everybody's nervous race week, and we all start to think, oh my gosh, what am I going to eat? And keeping track of that now, you will go into race week carefree, because you will have a good idea of what works for you, and you'll be creating your personal training recipe, which is great. It also is a great motivational tool, because as you progress through the training season, you're going to be making adaptations. You're going to be getting stronger. You're going to be running longer, running faster. And they're small changes along the way, but when you reflect back to where you start and reflect back during the season, it's a great way to stay motivated, because you'll see your progress right in front of your eyes. And also, come race week, you're going to be able to look back, especially first timers, and say, oh my gosh, look at how far I've come. you'll be able to have faith and take pride in that training along the way. So keep track of your running recipe, whether it's manual, whether it's old school like the way I like to do it, or whether it's digital, because it's going to allow you to create your personal running recipe and keep you motivated along the way. Now, the fifth training secret is consistency. It's all about consistency. It's key. It's vital to your training. It's the foundation of your training. Without it, you do not evolve optimally. You do not train optimally. You do not perform optimally. It's the foundation. When you're building a house, consistency is the cement you put down, the slab of concrete, or the foundation that your house rests on. If you're not consistent with your training, you begin to have little cracks in the foundation of that house. What I call the domino effect. It's all about maintaining that momentum. When I was a young girl, I used to play with dominoes. I also used to play with Pong, the first digital game on TV, but I'm dating myself and I digress. But the domino effect. I used to set up the dominoes in a zigzag kind of snake pattern on a table, and I would, after setting them all up, I would place them, close enough so that when I knocked one over, it would knock down the whole series of dominoes. And had I placed one a little bit too far away, it would have stopped the momentum, and training works the same way. There's going to be peaks and valleys during the season and in your running life. The key is to maintain that momentum. So when life intervenes, you adapt and you go with what I call better than nothing runs. Let's say this week you're supposed to get in a 5-mile run or a 50-minute workout, and you only have 30 minutes to get in. And something in our head say, well, I'm just not going to do that. I'll do that whenever and I'll catch up. Rather than just getting in the 25 or 30 minutes, if you get that shorter workout in, you're going to set that domino close enough to the one where it'll keep the momentum going. It's going to allow your body to maintain that fitness and go with the flow. And so that when you catch up the following week, or not catch up, but you continue to flow with your training cycle, now all of a sudden you still have that basis. You still have that momentum from one domino to the next, from one workout to the next. So make sure you're flexible. Understand that it's not perfection, and it's all about consistency. When you're consistent, even if you're running all of the same equal, easy workouts, the consistency is going to be your foundation from which you build. The sixth training secret is thinking outside the mileage. It's really easy to get caught up in the mileage, and I did this early in my running career. I'd focused so much on racking up the miles, thinking, that was the go-to primary resource for training. And when we do that, we completely miss all the other elements and miss the opportunity to evolve as your best runner. And what I mean by that is the running, and let's say the run walking or walking, whatever your primary source for race day is. That is certainly an element. You definitely need to do that. But there are so many other elements that can help you improve your performance. So you don't necessarily have to train harder or longer or with more miles. You just have to train with better balance and better quality. So cross-training, I'm a huge advocate for adding and incorporating cross-training, especially for newbie runners, because of the demands of running. There are some runners that are so efficient that can get away with lots and lots of miles that don't break down, but the everyday mortal, especially as you're learning how to run and run longer distances, your body needs time to adapt and recover. And so weaving in cross-training elements, whether that be a Zumba class or a cycling class or an elliptical machine or swimming, other activities where you're moving in very different planes, very different movement patterns, lower impacts. In some cases, the elliptical is non-impact, but weight bearing. Those are all excellent supplements to your training, because it's going to allow you to maintain and improve your cardiovascular fitness, but more importantly, it's going to balance out your body. So let's say you're doing a Zumba class. Well, in Zumba class, you are moving in 800 different directions. So your body doesn't do that when you're running. Your running is very repetitive in nature, so you tend to use the same muscles over and over and over again. where a class like karate or Zumba or swimming or anything where you're moving in different planes without that impact is going to be an enhancement too. It's like a seasoning to your training. And the athletes that I've coached, I started my whole coaching career in the corporate fitness industry, and every single running training program that I saw, that I'd researched, didn't include any of that. Cross training really wasn't a part of the traditional training routine. And I found that working within that corporate fitness atmosphere, and the athletes and the runners that were coming to me, they wanted to do all these other things. And I was doing it myself. I was teaching step, I was a cyclist. I was doing a lot of different activities, and found that when I personally trained and when I had those athletes train with just running, their bodies broke down faster than when I would have them train with core, very high quality workouts, 3, 4, in some cases, some of them running 5 times a week, but sprinkling in other modes, so you're alternating other activities, would balance their bodies out. And most importantly, it would keep their program fresh, so they weren't doing the same thing every day. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do cross training. I'm just saying that in my research, in my experience, that cross training has really been a beneficial tool. You're starting to see this with some of the elite athletes as well. When the first 20 years ago, when I first started doing this, even strength training wasn't a part of it. Flexibility wasn't a part of the traditional running routine. And you're starting to see some of the elite athletes, Josh Cox, Lauren Fleshman, who is a 5K world champion. She's starting to use the elliptigo, an elliptical trainer, because it's weight bearing, it's non-impact. It allows her body to do, she uses it as her easy recovery workouts, because they do 2 a days. They do 1 in the morning, another workout in the afternoon. So she wove that in with her flexibility, with her strength training, and to increase her volume, her running volume, she actually wove in the elliptigo. Some people use the elliptical. So that she could keep up with the volume of the other competitors in terms of how much training time, but she drastically reduced the amount of impact on her body, because her body was breaking down and she was getting hurt. She had a series of 3 or 4 almost career-ending injuries. So again, my point is not necessarily one specific cross-training tool, but don't be afraid to weave in those elements and spice up your routine, because it really can be beneficial. Same thing with nutrition. Nutrition, what you eat is going to help you recover faster, feel better, have better energy levels, improve the efficiency of your metabolism, lose weight, maintain weight, keeping track of that. We talked about that a little bit, but that nutrition element is a piece of that puzzle. All of these variables have an effect on your training performance as you train through the season. It's not just about the running. It's not just about the mileage. When I work with people one-on-one, I will look at this recipe. I will look at all the various elements to see how to improve their performance. Sometimes I actually cut back their mileage and will actually weave in other elements. Sometimes I'll focus more on the nutritional aspects. It just depends on what element is not really being focused on, which element is weak. So if you're looking at trying to improve your performance this season, let's say you're seasoned and you've done everything possible that you can think of with your training, just making a few little tweaks on all these other elements can make a significant difference in your improvements in your performance. Focusing on flexibility. I'm going to plug and promote a couple of deep tissue or muscle release flexibility exercises with a foam roller. You can use the stick, stretching exercises. All those things I'll be posting on the Facebook page, and I'll also include that in our next running class. Just different tools that you can focus on to balance out your training recipe. Focusing on stress. Stress is a huge energy consumer. Keeps us up at night, allows us not to sleep very well, really decreases the quality of our life. So just implementing ways to decrease your stress, whether that's changing the way you do things at work or at your house, or focusing on meditation, focusing on doing more calming activities, weaving some calming yoga-esque activities into your cross training if you are a high stress person, because lowering that stress level is really going to have a great effect, a profound effect on your training. And then finally, sleep. It's not on here, it's not on this bullet point list, but it's huge. There's so much research going on now that we don't sleep enough, but also it has to do with the quality of the sleep as well. So making sure that you're getting in plenty of quality of sleep. A couple of years ago, I had a major professional change, actually a year and a half ago, where I now set my own schedule. I write professionally and I speak professionally, so I kind of set my own schedule. I don't have to get up at a certain time anymore. So I've been able to sleep and track my sleep based on what my body needs rather than my alarm clock waking me up. And what I found as I've been training for various endurance races, 50Ks and long distance riding events where the training and the races have taken a toll on my body in terms of the demands, I've found that I've needed up to 2 hours of sleep more per night at times, especially after my longer or more challenging workouts. So again, just listening to your body, tuning into your body, making these little tweaks and thinking outside the mileage can have a profound effect on your performance and the training adaptation this training season. And the seventh and final training secret is to train mindfully and from within. I've seen runners go from, in my coaching time in the last many years, go from tuning into their body and having a basic digital watch and having to know internally how that pace felt, to seeing it on a watch and not really tuning into their body because they're going by what they're seeing on the watch. And what I mean by that is your watch should always be the outcome. Your watch, your GPS, I'm a huge fan of those gadgets, but they should never be your guide. They should be the outcome. It's a resource. It's a reference point for what's going on in your body in that moment. So your watch becomes second to what's going on in your body. A perfect example of this is when you take a road trip. When you drive, let's say in May when I come to speak at the expo at Cleveland, I'm going to drive from Chicago to Cleveland, which normally takes me anywhere from 5 to 6 hours. Let's say I head out with a goal of I'm going to run or I'm going to drive that trip in 5 hours today. And I get in my car and the weather is perfect and I'm feeling good and I don't really drink very much, so I don't have to stop to go to the bathroom. And I make it there in record time. I make it there in 4 hours and 55 minutes. Good for me. Now, let's take that same road trip and only it's storming. And I have to drive through 3 storms, which take me a heck of a lot longer. I'm drinking water along the way, so I have to stop. I run out of fuel, so I've got to take care of that. It's going to take me 7 hours to get there. Training works the same way. Every workout is like a road trip. And it's going to vary in speed, in your energy, and in your performance. There's so many variables. Think back to the recipe, how you sleep, how you fueled yourself, the stress going on in your life, the course that you're running. Are you traveling? Are you not traveling? Did you run the last run easy or hard? Did you run your long run too hard? Are you still recovering from that? You get my point. Every workout is like a road trip. You have no idea how that workout's going to feel. And if you go into it based on your watch and you go into it based on a predetermined pace, you're not going to ever be training at the optimal zone, in the optimal place. And that's going to have an effect on your domino. That's going to have an effect on the training effect. So the key is to train mindfully and from within, to take that watch, that pace time, and make it an outcome. Move it over to the side. And when you go in, you get into the car and you think, okay, I'm going to get to the destination. My goal today is to run easy, so that when I run easy, I know my body will recover from this easy zone, so that the next workout I will be recovered enough to push a little bit harder. When you do that, you release yourself from all the pressures and frustrations of pace, of running by pace. Then the pace becomes the outcome. You set yourself up to head into that run based on how you're feeling, how your body is feeling. When you're running easy, you should be running at an effort, which I call yellow, the yellow zone, running at an effort where you can still hold a conversation, where you can't hear your breathing. If you're hearing your breathing, that means you're moving up into a harder effort level, into a moderate effort level. If you're reaching for air, if you're gasping for air, if you're really pushing it hard, you're moving into the red zone. And if your schedule calls for an easy run and you're pushing it, you're trying to run that same, 2 weeks ago, 10-minute pace was easy for you because there was no wind, you felt great, you ate well, you slept well. 10-minute pace on that day was easy. 10:30 pace today might be easy because of all the other variables. So when you go into that workout, let your body be your guide. Train mindfully on that day and go by that effort zone, by the purpose of that workout. Because when you do that, you're going to run. It might be slower than what you want, but where you're going to run in the right zone, your body's going to adapt more efficiently and it's going to carry down and have a better training effect down the road. When you start to flow with that and train from within versus training from a pace, your life will change as a runner. I guarantee you. Because then you can start to learn how to pace yourself better on race day. You can start to learn to let go of those pace and the frustration that comes from not being able to run a certain pace. You begin to vary your intensity and your effort because your body is adapting nicely and you get better as a runner. So let go of that pace. Focus on the effort. I have a great story. We had a friend, I still have a friend, Kenyan runner who used to race our races, and he asked me at one point, I was at an expo with him and we were hanging out. He was going to race the next day and he said, Jenny, do you want to go for a run with me? Just a shakeout run is what he called it. And I said, are you kidding me? You're a Kenyan runner. I can't run. He said, no, I'm going to run easy. I'm racing tomorrow. I'm going to run easy. He said, yeah, what's your easy pace? My point in my life at that point was, 9:30 pace was very easy for me. And he said, I'm going to run a 9-minute pace. And this is a guy that was running 5-minute pace in his races. So he went out and he literally ran that slowly with me. That was his shakeout run. That was his easy run. I think mortal runners tend to get caught up in having a specific pace. And where the elite runners go right or do well is to literally tune into their bodies and run based on the day and run based on how you're feeling in that moment and really, truly taking it easy. When you do that, running becomes so much more fun too. So again, train mindfully and you'll progress like a superhero. So there you have it. The 7 training secrets every runner should know for a highly successful running season. Just remember to tune in because every mile brings you closer to who you are when you're paying attention along the way. I want to thank you for joining in on this webinar, this running class, the first of 3. There's 2 more coming, so stay tuned for that. And also, if you have a training question along the way, I'll be hanging out on Tuesdays on the Cleveland Marathon Facebook page. And if you happen to find this webinar useful, please share it with your running buddies. Until then, happy trails.